Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us at our cybersecurity awareness webinar, specifically today for the healthcare sector. My name is John Avon, and I'm the Executive for Health and Medfin here at NAB. It's my pleasure to be your host today. I'd like to welcome our NAB Health, Medfin, and HiCaps customers, as well as other valued customers from across the NAB network who've joined us today, and many other guests who've taken the time and the opportunity to join us for this evening's webinar. Before we begin today, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of where I'm joining you from, the Turrbal and Yagara peoples, as traditional custodians of Meanjin, which is here in Brisbane. I'd also like to acknowledge all First Nations guests who are joining us today. The event has been accredited today for 1 hour of continuing professional development for medical practitioners, dental practitioners, pharmacists, and allied health professionals. After the event, you'll receive an email containing your certificate of completion, which you can then upload to your CPD home. You'll also receive a link to the recording. At NAB, we are committed to sharing practical and up-to-date insights and education for you regarding online risks. Our team here at NAB works closely with healthcare businesses and practitioners to build awareness of these risks, provide practical advice, and to keep cybersecurity front of mind at all times. We know just how busy you are, so we really appreciate you taking out of your busy days to participate in this webinar today, which again is a really important topic and something that's front of mind for a lot of us. Cybersecurity is no longer just a technology issue. It's a core business risk, and we've seen many examples in the media, and I'm sure that everyone on the call knows someone who's been impacted by cybersecurity issues. It affects trust, it impacts continuity of your business, and it impacts growth of your business. We all know that the threat landscape continues to evolve. Attacks becoming more targeted, even more sophisticated, and even more disruptive to businesses. In today's environment, resilience matters as much as prevention. How organisations prepare, respond, and recover is absolutely critical to ongoing business operations. Our clients are facing increasing regulatory, operational, and reputational pressures when it comes to cyber risk. And again, we've seen this play out in the media for public companies many, many times. Today's session is designed to share practical insights, real-world observations, and actionable steps to help you strengthen your cyber posture. We'll focus on what matters most: protecting your customers, protecting your data, and protecting your business, while enabling you to operate in this environment with confidence. So today we'll provide you with an update on cybersecurity environment. More broadly, we'll cover invoice scams, we'll talk about social engineering and remote access scams, we'll talk about ransomware, business email compromise, and safeguards. We'll also be running a live Q&A through the session. And at the end of the session or the presentation, we will get to as many of the questions as we can. So please, as we go through this, if there's anything that comes up that you'd like to ask us, please put it in the Q&A box and we'll do our very best to get to it once the presentation's over. Look, I'm really, really happy and pleased to be here today, and I'd love to introduce to you our expert presenter, Mariam Nasser. Mariam is a security culture consultant at NAB with a passion to grow capability and awareness in this space. Mariam has worked in various areas of the bank, witnessing firsthand the impact of cyber incidents on the NAB community more broadly, and aims to empower NAB customers and colleagues on ways to identify, protect, and respond to cyber threats. Mariam is passionate about advancing people-focused security practices and helping organisations move just beyond compliance to a true security culture. So once again, Mariam, thank you so much for joining us today, and I'll now hand over to you for the presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, John. And hi and welcome, everybody. I'll quickly share my screen and then we'll get started. So again, just very quickly, my name is Mariam, and I really firstly just want to start by thanking you for taking the time out of your day. This session really is an investment, not only professionally, but also personally, as what you learn here today, you can take home and apply it there and also share with your friends and family. I'll do a very quick agenda rundown for us. So today we'll be covering what the current cybercrime environment is, what are some of the top threats we face, what are some safeguarding and reporting that we've got, and like we said, we'll aim for some questions at the end, so feel free to put your questions in the chat throughout the session. Now, why the health sector, you may be wondering, right? Why is it so attractive for cyber criminals? Well, you'll probably assume it's because, of the data, and that's true. But it's also the nature of, the urgency of your services that you provide. So on screen, I've got a couple of headlines for you, and you may not be a stranger to many of these, right? The New South Wales hospitals were exposed in, Jan 2026. We also saw some of their medical staff data leaked in September 2025. Medibank, everyone's well and truly aware of the cost of that. And St. Vincent's also had an attack in 2024. So is it because hospitals and organizations don't have adequate controls that cyber criminals are targeting them? Well, not necessarily. If you think about it, when cyber criminals are looking to target, they are always going to target the weakest link, right? And unfortunately, sometimes that can be the humans that are actually using the technology and sitting behind the computers. So, not having adequate controls can definitely increase the risk of a preventable cybersecurity incident. However, as the humans actually running that technology and using that technology, it is our utmost, job to be able to make sure that we always are doing it with diligence. Now, another thing I really wanted to point out is not just the cost of, data loss and data breaches, but sometimes when incidents happen, it can also end up in blackmail for you know, our customers that may be breached. So unfortunately, we did see Genea Fertility have a breach early last year in January 2025. In June, it was discovered that there was unfortunately a few cases where people were actually blackmailing sperm donors. Now, we all know that that is anonymous and, it's very safeguarded. They fill in countless papers to make sure that they're not in a position where they're being blackmailed by it in the future or impacted by it, because sometimes you may just want to do it out of the goodness of your heart and you don't really want people to know about it. But imagine how someone would feel if that information gets out, particularly to their friends and family who may not be aware of it. Now, how big is the problem? Well, unfortunately for us in healthcare continues to be the top three non-government sector still reporting incidents to the Australian Cybersecurity Centre, which is the ACSC. Last year alone, 47 million Australians had their accounts breached in 2025. That is a 12% increase from 2023. Now, that is overall the number of Australian accounts breached, so it's not specific to healthcare, but it just goes to show how astronomical the number is. And unfortunately, a report is still being made to report cyber every 6 minutes. So that is the government reporting body. We have seen that number remain constant at 6 minutes for the last 3 years. And where do we fit into all of this? Well, about 60% of all breaches involve the human element, right? So this is what we are wanting to focus on today as to how can we uplift the human element, which is ourself. Well, the first step is here. You being here is the first step to uplifting the human element. Now we're going to take you through a little bit as to who are these criminals, what do they look like, and what are some of the things that you can look out for. The first one is, I know a lot of the times when I get you to envision a cyber criminal, so if I ask you to close your eyes, you'll imagine somebody wearing a dark hoodie, probably a lone wolf. But cybercrime is a lot more lucrative than that. I was looking at a Microsoft study just earlier today. It is estimated the cybercrime industry will be worth $13.8 trillion by 2028. It's currently at 10.5, so you can imagine the profit margin in the next 2 years, right? So a lot of the time it is organized crime. They can also be ideologically motivated activists, or it can sometimes just be an opportunist who's found a little loophole in a script and trying to exploit that. We do know that there's definitely nation state and government sponsored actors involved as well. And at times there may be a malicious insider or employee that's, a little bit too disgruntled and maybe, exploiting the organization that way. Well, how do you then know what to look out for? The very first thing I want to take us through today is ransomware. So I'm sure you've all heard about ransomware. It really made headlines, especially when Medibank and Optus happened, because everyone's instance response was that it must be ransomware. In that case, it wasn't, but ransomware is the number one targeted for healthcare sector at the moment. It is basically malicious software. So just like you know about viruses that can, hurt somebody when in a healthcare setting, ransomware is basically a virus that hurts your computer and your electronic devices. It primarily is delivered through suspicious attachments or link. It can also be delivered by scanning QR codes, and it's designed to disrupt business with the aim of getting you to pay a ransom. It can also involve the criminal stealing the data, and there is no guarantee that even if you pay the ransom, the data still won't be leaked onto the dark web or the criminal marketplace, as we like to call it. Now, cyber.gov.au, which is the Australian Cybersecurity Centre, definitely have some guidelines on what you should do in the event of a ransomware attack in your practice or in your clinic. Make sure you check that one out if you ever need to. But unfortunately, with ransomware as well, sometimes there is just no option because the encryption is so strong that there is no other way to unencrypt the data unless you have the key. So what can you do to prevent your business from ransomware? Well, making sure that your softwares are always up to date is number one, and having a backup. I don't think I can emphasize this one enough, but having a backup of everything that you need in the event that you're unable to access your systems or you're unable to access your data is the number one way you can get your business back up and running. Now that's ransomware. And I did mention suspicious attachments or link, right? So what do some of these suspicious emails or text messages look like? Let's go through a couple of them. And look, for this one, it's pretty good, right? We know with the rise of open source AI and ChatGPT and the likes, criminals have gotten better. Generally their branding's pretty on point, the emails are reasonably well written. So we're no longer looking for spelling mistakes or grammar mistakes. And it may not be so straightforward, but there are always some telltale signs that you can look at to identify if an email is suspicious. The very first one is that if you get something that's impersonating to be from NAB, the first thing I want you to do is check that email address, because if it doesn't end in @nab.com.au, it is not legitimate. And do the same for your contractors, for your supply chains, for your clients, or for your patients if they are emailing you, right? So that's the first check. The second check is there's no personalization involved. When you onboard with NAB or when you have a patient, you refer to them using their name because we know them and we want to personalize that interaction. A lot of the time, there may be an unofficial number for you to call. Sometimes there may be a link as well, but we have seen in the recent few months, criminals have actually started using numbers, and they'll try and use 1-800 numbers, 13 numbers to make it more convincing. But again, if there is a number in an email, I want you to go and look for a publicly listed number that, one you've got saved or something you can Google before you act upon anything. And most of the time, there isn't a NAB sign-off. NAB's a team of 40,000 organization. If you're getting an email from NAB team, how do you know which NAB team is reaching out to you? But those are just some of the red flags that you may see in a suspicious email. Like I said, they can sometimes also have QR codes for you to scan, or there may be links. If you do have a link in an email, there's a really handy tip that I can give to you. So if you see a link in an email, just hover over it, because they can make it look like it may be nab.com.au, but when you hover over it and it's, it.bit.co.in, you instantly know that that's not the legitimate NAB website. Now, that's emails, right? And you know what? I get it. I still use emails enough, but I know that we're all on our phones most of the time, and we're in the rush. We're trying to do things on the go, and phones are definitely the way to go for that, right? And criminals know that as well. So SMS phishing or phone phishing is a lot more common than emails. The silver lining in that one is that the web address can't actually be hidden. So if something's not coming from nab.com.au, a criminal cannot make it appear to be coming from nab.com.au. Now, if you have a look at the example I've got on the left-hand side for you, in the phone, NAB's reached out to one of our customers, Vicky, and we've sent her a couple of messages, right? They're pretty good. They're personalized to Vicky. We're not asking her to click on a link. We're not telling her we're blocking your accounts or doing anything, and we're thanking her from NAB. The next couple follow the very much similar pattern. However, as soon as we get to the last one, all of a sudden, it's your NAB account has been suspended. Click here for re-verify your data, and there's a link in there that's not nab.com.au. Now, you may be wondering to yourself, well, how did that end up in a legitimate text chain with NAB? It's got a lot less to do with NAB controls being breached, but more to do with your smartphones being too clever for their own good. So what happens is criminals use a technology known as alpha tag. They basically will say, hey, make this message appear to come from NAB, even if it's not using the NAB numbers. Now, your smartphone being really, really helpful and wanting to do something to please you, basically, will be like, oh, I've got a message chain from NAB already, and this message says it's coming from NAB. Let me marry the two and put them in the same conversation. So it's not to say that the NAB controls have been circumvented. It's just to say that sometimes criminals can bypass them and make things, appear as they are coming from NAB or any other organization for that matter, even if it's not. So I've just got a couple more examples here for you. It can be links, it can be numbers. Again, the only recommendation is to just stop, check the link before clicking on it, contacting them on an official number that you can look up or one that you've got saved for yourself. Now, in the middle, I've got something that says SMS message, but it doesn't look like a traditional message. This is something known as flash SMS, and it's actually really old technology. And, being in the healthcare sector, you may be aware of it, but usually governments and countries use it to alert people of natural disasters as such. Now, criminals realized that this wasn't a technology that had been used for the last 10 to 15 years. So what they ended up doing was they ended up sending people flash messages. And the thing about flash messages is as soon as you get one, your phone lights up. So what that does is it causes that alarm in your brain to say, hey, that doesn't look like a traditional text message. It's probably something really important. I need to act upon it. Again, it's just to show that criminals don't necessarily come out with new ways all the time, but they also revert to really old ways to try and convince us to click on links in messages and emails. Now, let's say you did some checks, but you still weren't convinced that it may be suspicious, and you did click on one of these links, whether that's for NAB Connect or internet banking. You may end up at a page that looks very much similar to our normal NAB Connect website. We know of criminals linking directly to the NAB Security Hub at nab.com.au from their malicious websites, as well as the legitimate help page, even stealing our security alerts to make their web pages look legitimate. The best advice I can give you here is to never click on links in order to access your internet banking or NAB Connect. Always type the URL into nab.com.au and access it from there, or use your apps, because that's a guaranteed way to know that you're using the right channel. Now, that was a little bit about SMS phishing and email phishing, right? But what about those phone calls that you can sometimes get where people are trying to, impersonate NAB or Telstra, or they may even be trying to impersonate a colleague of yours? So we have seen instances where people will receive calls pretending to be from the NAB fraud team and asking them to download a, program in order to stop unauthorized transaction, or asking you to transfer money to a safe account. Please don't ever do that. Your money is safe wherever it is, whether that is NAB or another bank, and we will never need you to download a program in order to protect your wealth. Now, some of the calls may be different. They may be asking for your security tokens or your security codes or one-time pins. So again, always read these text messages very carefully, because if you ever do get a security code or a security token, it will explicitly say, do not share this with anyone, even NAB. So just be mindful of calls like that. They can also, like I said, impersonate your MBN. They can impersonate a contractor, a supply chain provider that you work with, or a peer. So you may get an email or a phone call from your receptionist saying she needs to change her bank account details. It is always advisable to contact them on a saved or publicly listed number to verify that request before you make any changes, because unfortunately, social engineering via phone call is the #1 contact method by losses for Australian in 2024. And sometimes you downloading a program and not doing anything on that program can still be enough for it to install malware in your device, spread to your network, or for a criminal to just be lurking in the background. So it's really important that you don't act upon any of these requests. And if you're ever unsure, hang up and do your checks. Now, spear phishing or whale phishing is what it used to be called in the past, but it's basically when a criminal is trying to use your legitimate services for illegitimate means. So what do I mean by that? So at NAB, we use SharePoint, which is the example I've got on the right-hand side for you, right? We're on Microsoft, we use SharePoint. So it's very normal for me to receive a file from somebody from SharePoint because that's their official email. However, I don't know of a Sage, or I may know of a Sage. What criminals now do is they will use legitimate channels such as SharePoint, such as DocuSign, such as Xero, to send you fake invoices, hoping you will click on them, and most of the time these will also be delivering malware into your devices. Now, stop. Don't ever click on anything that you're not sure of, even if you know a Sage, but you're not expecting an invoice or a document from her. Don't click on it because sometimes a click is more than enough for malware or a virus to be installed into your device, and that can just spread to your network before you even know it. And as we know, that can be very detrimental, particularly given the urgency and the nature of services you all provide. Now, that's spear phishing, right? What about invoice scams? And this one, again, we see a lot more common for our businesses and in our healthcare sector, is you may get invoices from your contractor with new account details that even they don't know about. Or, you may get a letter from ANZ saying this person's bank account details have been updated. Can you go ahead and pay them here? So what criminals do is basically, let's say someone has clicked on a link and unknown to them, nothing's happened in that moment, and they're like, ooh, dodged a bullet there. But unfortunately, that has given a cyber criminal access to your email. So the next time they send through an invoice to one of their suppliers or to somebody that they work with, the criminals will intercept that email and change the payment account details to an account in their control. Unfortunately, once the money gets transferred into their account, it is really hard for us to recover. So again, if you ever, onboard a new patient, if you ever onboard a new employee, or if you're just updating account details for one of your suppliers, it is really, really good to just pick up the phone, give them a quick 30-second phone call, get a verbal confirmation from them that these are the details they're wanting to update to before you make any payment. Because like I said, recovery is a lot harder than prevention. So if you can stop the money going into a cyber criminal's account, that is the best outcome for everybody. Now, business email compromise, like I said, it can happen from criminals just basically intercepting your emails. It can be from text messages. It can be from scanning QR codes. And, most of the time they do it to intercept payments on your behalf, but they can also make fake payment requests to your contact in your address book. So again, it's really important that you always safeguard your business emails and your username and password. Now, what are some of the other tips I could give you? I guess the first one is just being aware of phishing messages. The second one is turning on multi-factor authentication, or 2FA. So what is multi-factor authentication? Well, it's something you know, which is your username or password, plus something you have, which is a security code or a security token. And the best form of MFA is something you are. So your biometrics, your Face ID, your fingerprint. So unless you've got a mono die twin, I think those are the most identical types, it'll be very hard for anyone to replicate your biometrics. So those are the safest forms of multi-factor authentication. If you've got the opportunity to set up MFA on any account, I highly recommend you do it, because Microsoft did a study in 2024, which basically said that if every single person had MFA with biometrics on their account, it would make it improbable for criminals to be able to hack our accounts. So just really handy tip. If you've got MFA available, make sure you set that one up. Now, and like I said, when it comes to a payment request, always make sure once you receive the request, you contact them on a number that you've got saved for them, and then you verify that request before you act upon it. Well, that was a little bit of what we have seen, but what about the future? What's 2026 holding for us? QR phishing, or quishing as we like to call it, is definitely something of concern, particularly now because post-COVID, QR codes have become the norm, right? Restaurants are using them to order meals directly to your tables. Councils are using them for people to be able to alert them if a bin's overflowing. However, criminals can very much also intercept these codes in public locations and alter them to deliver malware such as InfoStealer, which made the headline a couple of months ago. So just be really mindful of scanning any public QR codes. And if you're unsure, just ask for a website or a direct, link that you can type in yourself before you act upon it. Remote access is definitely a concern. Unfortunately, we've seen 57% of all remote access reported to the Australian Cybersecurity Centre is by phone calls. We then have emails and text messages that lead to remote access scams as well. AI and deepfakes. This is, it's not new to anybody. AI, ChatGPT, deepfakes, Sora. The open source intelligence has become really common in the last couple of years, but it's also basically accelerating the criminals in being able to create and constantly attack, organizations, clinics, practices, right? Basically, with AI, what's happening is previously criminals would have to spend time because if, one of their ransomware attacks didn't land, they would have to spend time, redo that, see if they can change the payload one way or another, convince it, make their phishing email look a little bit more convincing. However, AI is just accelerating the speed at which all of that can be done. So it's really, really imperative that we are mindful. And again, even if it looks like your medical director is asking you to do something, I want you to pick up the phone and verify that request because you never know, it may just be a deep fake. This is off a romance scam, but unfortunately we see deep fakes all the time, whether that's impersonating our executives or whether that's impersonating other executives elsewhere, like the finance worker having to pay $25 million because there was a deep fake of their CFO asking them to do so. So just be really, really careful. Always do your checks. And if you're ever unsure, just pick up the phone and verify that. Now, that sounds like a lot of scary stuff, and I know you all deal with scary stuff on the normal, but that can, still be quite alarming. And I'm not here to scare you, but there is good news, right? There's so much you can do to protect your business. There is so many things we've got on in place, and the government's got to support businesses and practitioners. The very first thing that I highly recommend if you're not yet aware of is the Australian Cybersecurity Centre Essential 8. So the Essential 8 are 8 steps that can basically help you prevent malware from running and then to limit the extent of incidences and enable data recovery in the event there is an event. Now, highly, highly recommend that this is something you implement into your business if you're not yet aware of. What are the top 5 worst passwords of 2026? So NordPass is an amazing study. They basically look at all the passwords on the internet, which is about 10 million passwords at any given point in time, and they look at what are the 5 most common. So if one of your password appears on screen, please don't tell me, please don't put it in the Q&A box or comment about it, but make sure you go ahead and change it because if your password is on the screen, it only takes a criminal about 0.001 millisecond to be able to brute force that. So at number 5, we've got QWERTY123. At number 4, we've got password. Surprisingly, this had changed from the previous years because it was 1234566 at number 4. Number 3, we've got 1234567 8 because you should always aim for minimum 8 letters or characters. Number 2 is 1234567 8 9. And at number 1, we've got 1234566. Now, let me know with reactions if you can. Did that surprise anybody or, are we used to seeing such passwords? Because these passwords are the top 5 worst passwords of 2026, right? And unfortunately, it doesn't even take a millisecond for a criminal to be able to log into your account. But I'm in the same position as you, right? Like it is so difficult to have a unique password. Even with the recommendation of passphrases, how do we remember all of that? Well, use a password safe. So password safes are basically password managing tools that allow you to create unique complex passwords and store them for each of your accounts. So then all you need to do is remember the master password and that's it. So a password for the device that you've got your password management tool or your password safe on, and a password for the password safe. And it can do everything else for you. Now, I get this question asked a lot. What about the ones that are inbuilt into my iPhone or my Samsung? The recommendation is, or my advice to you would be to use an external password safe because they are more secure and highly encrypted as compared to using the one that's built into your phone. So that's Answer that one. What else can you do? Well, have some technological safeguards in place, right? If you are using NAB Connect, NAB's Connect's got amazing safeguards in place. We've got security tokens on it. There's payment limits. You can have segregation of duty. You can have multiple authorizers before a payment goes through. Implement the Essential 8 into your business and use PayID wherever you can to make payments. PayIDs can be set up on mobile numbers, emails, as well as ABN. So it's really, really handy and you're able to verify who you're paying before paying them, right? Do some safeguards with your people, right? Make sure everybody in your clinic, in your practice, in your pharmacy is aware of suspicious messages. Use different passwords for different accounts. Use different computers to create and approve transactions and keep up to date with the latest threats. Also, use different passwords between work and home because if a password at home is compromised and you're using the same one at work, well, both your passwords are now compromised, right? And have processes in place. So validate new accounts, or changes to payment instructions by calling a known number. Have an agreed process for making payments. So, e.g., Sam creates the payment, Ellie approves the payment once, and then John goes ahead and approves the payments for the second time before it goes through, because that's 3 points of check, right? And I'm sure if there is a criminal lurking somewhere, one of you will pick up on it. Have an agreed payment process with your supply chain. So let them know that, hey, if you want to change your account details, we need you to come in or we need you to send us an email, but a text as well. Ensure business risk reviews include the topic of cybersecurity. I cannot emphasize this enough. If you keep security awareness and cybersecurity front of mind, that is the best way to uplift your security culture. Now, that was a lot of information and you're probably not going to remember all of that. And you know what? That's okay. You're all saving lives out there. But where can you find most of this information? You can head to nab.com.au/security for a wealth of knowledge. We've got up-to-date articles with practical advice on investment scams, remote access scams, business email compromise. We also run monthly webinar series. So we've got webinars such as this one for our business customers, but we've also got webinars for the community and, our personal customers. And the best part is you don't actually have to be a NAB customer to attend them. You can sign up to them. They are free for everyone. We've got a cybersecurity toolkit for businesses on things they can implement to uplift their cybersecurity culture, as well as we post security alerts on the latest threats, and we've got a podcast for businesses. Now, what do you do if you do have an incident? Well, the very first thing is if you believe you've been affected by a fraud or scam, report it immediately to your banker or call us on our 13 10 12 fraud hotline. Fraud and scam cases can take a number of weeks to resolve, so just be mindful of that when making contact and reporting it to us. If you do receive an email, SMS, or call pretending to be from NAB, we would greatly appreciate if you forward that to fish@nab.com.au. There's also a number that you can save to forward any text messages to. And the Australian Cybersecurity Centre has a wealth of resources at cyber.gov.au. You can also report an incident at cyber.gov.au/report. And how I mentioned earlier, keeping up to date with threats, the Australian Cybersecurity Centre also has an alert service where they send you an email regarding anything that's upcoming and burning. So it's really, really handy one to set that one up. Now, if there is one thing I ask you to take away from today's session, that is to always stop, check, and protect. Scams often contains urgent requests. Take your time and consider the red flags. If you are ever unsure, reach out and verify via publicly listed phone number. Protect. Contact us straight away if you've shared details or sent money as a result of a scam. And I'm not going to end on that note. I'm going to end on a much sweeter note. So we do actually have a 1 year free of CrowdStrike, award-winning cybersecurity protection software for our business customers. It is free for anybody that basically is a business customer and is with NAB. It is limited to 150 devices. So make sure to check that one out at nab.com.au/business offers. I'm going to leave this one up here for where to go for more information for the next minute or two. But like I shared earlier, nab.com.au/security is really, really handy. We've also got the cyber.gov.au, which is the Australian Cyber Security Centre, and scamwatch.gov.au. All of these are there to assist you A lot of them also have reporting that you can, report incidents to, as well as alert services. Thank you all so much for your time today. I hope you've taken all of that in, and it's okay if it's a little bit overwhelming. We will be sending you an email follow-up with some of that information as well.
Thanks, Miriam. A lot in there. And look, I encourage everyone to, if you've got any questions, pop them in the Q&A box there. I think some of the things that sort of jump out at me that it's pretty confronting, right? I mean, we see this all over the place, and everyone sees it. I mean, the business email compromise is one that we've seen a lot, and there's other sort of ways of defrauding and scamming customers coming through, but definitely the business email compromise. And we've seen examples where the accounts payable person or the person on reception or the office manager gets an invoice and the account number's changed on the invoice. Now, what happens is that supplier's email's been compromised, and rather than ringing and checking, they go into their internet banking or their NAB Connect and they actually load up the new profile and send the money away. So, I mean, this is pretty basic compared to what's going on now and across the globe in terms of cybersecurity. But stop, check, all those sorts of things we talk about. If you're not sure, just stop. Don't press the button. Make sure that you ring that person and say, hey, by the way, have your account number details changed? No, they haven't. Okay, well, think you've got a problem with your email compromise. So, there's some practical tips in there as well. The one thing I want to ask, Marion, and we'll hopefully get some questions from the audience, but the QR code one really got me because I use QR codes a lot, and like
Mm-hmm.
it's not immediately obvious that that's an issue. But what does that look like? You scan a code and then does that direct you to a fraudulent website, and that's how the process starts? Is that what that typically is?
Yeah, so basically with QR codes, as soon as you actually scan it, it can start running malware or malicious software in the background. So we know of softwares that don't actually require any further action from the end user for it to actually install a virus. So let's say you're in a public setting, such as, you're out having a walk and you're at Victoria Gardens in Melbourne, and you've scanned the QR code that's on your public bin because the bin's overflowing, right? That action alone is enough for malware to start downloading in the background. So as soon as you scan it, it pops up with a little link and you go ahead to that website and that's it. That virus can basically download in the background and you won't even know that it's there unless you start to notice suspicious transactions on your account or you start noticing your phone's a little bit slow and it's laggy. So it's so important that if you are not sure or if you are in a public setting, you don't actually scan those QR codes because sometimes a scan is all that's needed. It doesn't require any further actions from the end user.
Wow, that's pretty frightening. We're getting some questions coming through. Thanks, Darren, for your question. And this is one that was on my mind too. Password vaults are great. I'm very happy using one, both work and personally. However, they sometimes get hacked themselves. How should I think about this issue and picking between providers or going it alone?
Look, there isn't a particular password safe we endorse at NAB. However, what I would advise is to go for the one that's got the least worst reviews, right? Because unfortunately, all technology is breakable. So, a password safe has 264-bit encryption. So if anybody's a nerd, that's basically improbable. I won't use the word impossible because nothing's impossible, but it is highly unlikely someone can unencrypt your password vault. However, sometimes if your password for the password vault is the same as a password used elsewhere, and that particular password has been breached in credential stuffing or something, that is the only way criminals can access your password vault. If the actual password vault have a breach themselves, i.e., password safe has a mega scale breach because one of their controls were breached, unfortunately, at that point, yes, the encryption is compromised, right? Because that's when, again, the criminals have been able to actually break into the company's safe, and there's not much we can do as an end user in that stage. So my recommendation is to go for the one that is least worst and make sure your password for your password safe is really, really strong. So something like a passphrase, right? Which is just a combination of random words, letters, numbers, and symbols, makes it so much harder than just something that is, basically conventional. So I'll give you an example. My password safe password, and this is not true. If you want to try it, it won't work. But something like Frank Wintergreen Pizza. I'll swap a couple of letters out for numbers. I'll add a symbol here and there. That is way harder for a criminal to breach than my cat's name is Bella. because that is sequential, right? That is something that's quite, if they figure out my cat, they're more likely to figure out the rest of that as well. So always use complex and unique passphrases when it comes to your password safes and vaults in particular.
No, good answer. Thank you. Another one's just come through from Kathleen. How secure is Google Password Manager or Microsoft when they ask you to save your logon? I know there's getting quite specific, Marion, but there's obviously interest in this. So yeah, Google
So,
Password.
Catherine, without being any controversial or saying anything that I shouldn't, I may be biased to Apple or Samsung. I won't disclose which one, but again, they are safe. It's not to say that they're not safe. However, the safer options is to use an external password manager, right? Because if you have unfortunately scanned a QR code that's got malware in it and all your passwords are just stored in your phone without any additional encryption from a password safe, well, guess what? All of them are now compromised. So the recommendation is to always use an external password safe because it just adds an additional layer of protection.
Sure. Here's another one. Healthcare professionals are extremely busy. Well, we know that. What's one cyber habit that makes the biggest difference, do you think?
Ooh, look, there isn't one single habit that I will say can eliminate all the cyber risks that's out there, but if you just stop, so pause before clicking on any links or sharing any information, making any payments, even if the message seems urgent or legitimate, verify. So check, with the contractor, your peer, whoever's sending you that email or requesting any information on an official number or through their official website. That's the best way to protect yourself. So if you have provided details and you've fallen for, unfortunately, a scam, immediately let your bank know, immediately let your banker know, because the faster we know about it, the more likely we are to be able to recover something for you. So stop, check, protect is my recommendation as the one thing you should always be doing.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's a good one, and I think the other one, which can sometimes be challenging. We've all got to make sure that our staff and our colleagues within our businesses feel confident to challenge. Because we've seen scams happening in businesses where someone purports to be the CEO via an email saying, "Hey, transfer $30,000 to this account," and people do it without question. So we've got to create an environment in these businesses where people can challenge, say, "Hey, look, this doesn't feel right. Stop." Stop's the key one, right? Stop before you do anything. Take your time. If it's really that urgent, it's probably going to be something to be a bit suspicious. So just check and
Mhm.
the phone ringing the publicly listed number is a good way to confirm because Mary, I'm sure you know this and we've seen it. People, there's been mobile numbers ported to scams as well over the time. So calling the publicly available number is important when you're paying away to suppliers where you do have any suspicions as well. Uh,
100%.
Another one come through. What are the top three things a small clinic or practice should implement immediately?
Ooh, this one's easy. So the first one would be the Australian Cybersecurity Centre Essential 8. Strong passwords and passphrases as a mandatory for everybody. And you know what? Have a timeline on it. I'm not saying do it quarterly, do it half yearly, do it yearly. You pick, but have a timeline. Make sure the expectation to change your passwords is a regular one and awareness. So if you get a phishing email, share that around with your peers, share that around with your supply chain so people know what to look out for. If you get a business or a contractor that's being impersonated, let them know. So again, they're well and truly aware of what that impersonation looks like, and you reporting it to them may be the only time they're made aware of it. So those are the three things. If you implement right away, you're already one step ahead in your cyber culture.
Sure. Great. Thank you. I'm just curious, Mariam, and we've seen a number of advancements in the banking industry more broadly, and I know the banks are working together with government and others, telcos and those sorts of things. What are sort of the latest, and this is a question without notice, this is one of my questions, so apologies if it's off track, but what are some of the things that the industry is doing more broadly? And we've seen, the introduction of account name checking and those sorts of things coming in various guises.
Mhm.
What's happening domestically in that space, and then probably what are we seeing overseas? Is there other things overseas that we might be able to, bring to Australia as well to protect our.
Definitely. Look, there is so much, and I think the front and center of that is information sharing across banks, right? So, as you know, NAB's a big four bank, but along with our peers are ANZ, Westpac, and CommBank, we basically have something you can call a working group where we share all information. So, if we are made aware of a mule account at NAB, we will share that information with our peers to let them know, hey, do you want to run this in your database? Or hey, someone's reported a Westpac customer as, taking their money and it's turned out to be a scam, can you look into deep dive? And they will be willingly sharing that information. So I think information sharing across big corporations and organizations, particularly in the financial sector, is definitely a really positive step forward. In Australia as well, we've also had a lot of legislation that's now come through, particularly with the National Cybersecurity Centre, and the coordinator, that's been appointed a couple of years ago. We know that the laws are getting stricter and it's for the best, right? Banks are being held accountable more, which is then allowing us to have stricter controls and be able to safeguard our customers and their money. Globally, we do know that there are obviously the UK implemented late last year that, they were going to pay out all scam victims. And whilst that's a good step forward for them in, hindsight, maybe, unfortunately, what we did see was that the rise of scams in UK exponentially grew because now criminals were like, well, people are probably going to get their money back. So let them get their money back and then we'll go again because it's just a chain, right? Because now the government's mandated that, you know what, we're going to give everybody their money back. And criminals are like, well, that's just more money put into the economy that we can then target people for. So not necessarily all changes can be, or may be good, but we'll find out in the next couple of years, right? I know for us at NAB, COP, which is confirmation of payee. So that's when, you basically now put someone's account details into your internet banking and it tells you whether it is a match. So, yep, that matches the detail held with the receiving bank, whether that is, a partial match. So maybe the first name matches, but the surname doesn't, or it's not a match. Please recheck those information. I know we're looking to, roll that out into NAB Connect sometimes in this year, probably early next year. So that again will be so handy for our businesses to just be able to put those details in. So if a supplier sent them new account details, they can, put those account details. And if it doesn't match with the receiving bank, well, there you go. That's another cue for you to go ahead and verify that using a publicly listed or safe number.
Yeah, there's a question here just then. Retail banks are starting to data match payee names and account numbers and providing real-time feedback to payers. Is NAB Connect looking at offering this to business customers?
Absolutely, we are. We are working on it. I will not put a timeline on it, but I'm going to tell you it will be out very shortly.
Great news. Thank you. Another one here, and please keep the questions coming. They're great questions so far. Ransomware attacks, we're seeing them, in the media as well, and we've seen actually hospitals, and they get a little bit of news coverage as well. What about our smaller practices? The dental clinic with 6 or 8 doctors, or the GP clinic with a number of doctors. Smaller practices. How do they go about protecting themselves from ransomware attacks? I know you've covered a fair bit of it, but a hospital or a big business has probably got better defenses than a smaller practice. So
Mhm.
what's your tips there?
Look, and you're spot on there, right? We know criminals target big corporations and hospitals. However, they also are probably aware that a smaller practice or a smaller GP clinic may not have the same level of defenses, and that's what they're looking to attack, right? They'll probably use automated attacks to try again and again until they get through. So again, implement the ACSC Essential 8. Have a ransomware protection software. Like I said, if you are a small clinic, you're very likely eligible for our CrowdStrike offer, which is 1 year free ransomware protection on NAB. You don't have to pay for anything. You don't even have to enter your credit card details to be able to uptake that. And you can take that on 150 devices. So that's any mobile or any laptop within your practice. Bingo, right? Like that's the number one thing you can do to protect your small business from ransomware.
Sure. There's a question here also about personal devices and emails in incidents, for in the healthcare sector, particularly. And look, everyone on the call, please know that we don't use our personal devices at NAB. We're not allowed to.
Mhm.
You don't send emails to your home email address, and there's very tight securities within NAB and a lot of large companies. But what's your take on personal devices being used in a healthcare setting and what that means for cyber risks?
Look, when you are accessing patient information on a personal device, basically what you are doing is you are increasing that data's, surface area is how we like to look at it, right? Initially, it was limited to a work device that may have controls such as, an antivirus software or an anti-ransomware software on it. But the instant you've emailed it to yourself and accessed it now on your personal device may not have the same controls And again, if your personal device is breached or your personal credentials to your email are, in a data breach, all of that patient information is now also compromised. So it is so imperative that you don't access anything confidential, anything patient information on a personal device, because we want to limit the value, we want to limit the size of the data, and we want to contain it to one network, which is your work network.
Yep. Okay, great. Thank you. There's a question here. It might be a bit specific and may not be one you're across, Marion, but I'll throw it to you because you're pretty capable anyway. But this one's about Kiteworks and ShareFiles. And New South Wales uses Kiteworks SA Health ShareFile. Are you across those? And they seem to be protecting the those entities rather than the receiver. Have you got any view on that one?
Yep, so that's exactly the spear phishing I was talking about earlier, right? So ShareFile is a legitimate service the New South Wales Health will use. What criminals will do is they will use a legitimate service to send you malicious emails. So again, you should never trust anything, even if it's coming from DocuSign, ShareFile, even if it's coming from Dorovich, right? Because just because it's coming from a legitimate provider or a legitimate service that you may use in your business, that does not mean it may not have been intercepted by a criminal. So it's always good to do some checks. Sometimes the telltale signs on those are a little bit harder to get, but it may just be that somebody named Sam is emailing you, but you've never worked with anyone named Sam from ShareFile, right? Or you weren't actually expecting something from ShareFile, such as those medical results that you've gotten for a patient named John, and you're like, I don't know, I don't think I should access this. So just contact, wherever they're coming from or wherever they say they're coming from. And if you can't make that contact, you should not click on it.
Implementing the ACSC, I think I got that right. Essential aid is complex and time consuming. One of our guests is asking, do you have any suggestions for a small business with no internal IT resources? Which is a great question.
You know what? That is an awesome question, right? And the resource we have is absolutely on nab.com.au/security for business. So what we've done is we've gone ahead and created a business toolkit that not necessarily talks about technical controls. It actually talks more about awareness. So spread that out to, your employees, put that in your practice, have a print that you can collect from one of your local NAB branches, or if you reach out to your banker, we can make that happen as well. Basically, it tells you what to look out for. What are some things that you can do from an educational and awareness level in your practice? So, whilst technical controls are great, like I said at the beginning, it's the humans that man the technology that we want to be able to educate. So, when you do that, again, you're already one step ahead of the criminals.
Great. And another one here. So I think I'm just trying to sort of paraphrase the question, but it's about busy clinical environments, and we've talked about some themes and the things that are happening. How do you actually make the change within a busy environment? What are some of the tips for people running a clinic or a practice? What are some of the tips to actually change the way we think about cybersecurity within the business?
Right? Make it simple. Make it blame free is the number one. So if you have somebody in your practice that's coming up to you and saying, hey, I may have accidentally clicked on something that's malicious, there should be no blame involved, because that's when we want to put our protecting hat on and we want to go, okay, what's the damage? What do we want to do? Right. So again, creating a really safe work environment is number one. Make security simple. It doesn't have to be complex. Like I said, a strong passphrase is really, really good. Talking about a recent, breach that's been in the media, such as New South Wales Health, such as Genea infertility, can sometimes be enough to raise awareness on that topic, right? Encourage people to share something they know. So today you're all here attending this session. Later, you're going to get a copy of the replay in your inboxes. Share that around. Have a team, lunch on where you're all chilling, having maybe pizza on our MDs, and share the video around, right? Have a chat about it. Make security a regular conversation point, not just something, ooh, an incident's happened, we now need to talk about it. It should be an agenda item in your quarterly business meetings. It should be an agenda item every week when you're talking to your staff and be like, hey, just being mindful, we know that InfoStealer is out there, so don't go around scanning any public QR codes, right? Make it simple, make it approachable, because that's how you're going to shift from a blame mindset or, oh, I made a mistake and I may get in trouble. Actually, no, if I raise this, we can act upon it and we can secure something.
Yeah. Well, you probably talked about this, but one that's come through is just the actual tactical part of this, if you've clicked on an email, a phishing email, you clicked on a link, or you've suspected malware on your device, you've sort of talked about it. But if I click on something today, what's the first thing I should do? What do I do straight away?
The very first thing I want you to do is disconnect from the internet.
Oh,
Don't want you to think about anything. So if you've clicked on a link and you see something populating, something downloading, or you've had the oh no moment, that may be malicious. I want you to put your device in airplane mode. It is the fastest way to disconnect from the internet. Most laptops now have it, all our phones have it, right? If you are in a physical setting where you've got a LAN connected to your device, pull it out because a lot of the times that is more than enough to stop any malware or virus from downloading or completing its download and install, right? The next thing I want you to do is basically change your password on a different device. So I want you to log in, if that was your phone, I want you to log in on a laptop and I want you to change your password to a secure password. And then take the device that you suspect to be infected to an IT professional for help because they'll be able to open it up in a very secure setting without compromising any data loss and let you know, hey, this is safe to use, or no, we need to do something to make it safe to use.
right. It's such a complex, part of the business, cybersecurity, and I love those simple tips. We can all remember those. Go onto airplane mode on your phone or your laptop. If you're on a blue cord, rip the blue plug out of the wall, right? That's
Actually,
unplug. Simple things we can do. Hey, we're nearly at time there. So thank you so much for the presentation, Mariam. I think there's been some great questions from the audience. We really appreciate those questions, and thank you so much for taking some questions that probably a little bit left field, and you've handled it beautifully. So I really appreciate the value you've added today. I just want to close by saying, look, cybersecurity is an ongoing journey. It's not a one-off initiative. It's not a thing to do today, tomorrow, today, and forget about tomorrow. It means staying ahead of, and it means continued focus, discipline, and adaptation. Organisations that do this the best are those that treat cybersecurity as a shared responsibility. So it's not just IT, it's not just the leaders, it's not just operations, it's everyone's responsibility across all parts of the business to be responsible for the for IT and the and cybersecurity and awareness. I guess the discussion today reinforces the importance of being proactive, investing early in resilience, investing in capability, having a plan, and really importantly, as Mariam talked about, letting your people know that if they've made a mistake, don't think they're going to get in trouble. They may get in trouble later on, but bring it forward, create a culture where they can bring it forward, say, hey, I think I've done something. The sooner you jump on this, the sooner we can deal with it. And a bit like the medical field, right? The sooner you find out about something, the better you can deal with it. Look, I hope the insights have been practical. I think they've been really, really well explained by Mariam. There's some good examples. I think they're relevant, and I think hopefully you can take those away and apply them to your own environment from tomorrow. Look, at NAB, we're committed to supporting our customers navigate this increasingly complex space. It really is a ever-changing, really complex threat landscape. So we'll continue to do these webinars. If any of these things raised today have raised issues for you or questions or highlighted things you want to do in your business, please reach out to your NAB banker. Please contact myself or anyone within NAB, and we will help continue that conversation to help you along that journey. Look, you're going to get a survey at the end of this. We please ask you to complete the survey. It's a really simple, probably 30-second survey. It just helps us to know that these are valuable or not, or what we need to change. So please, when you get the survey and it pops up, please just take the time to fill it out. We'd really appreciate your feedback. And look, I just want to once again thanks Mariam for such a great presentation. Really valuable insights and quite digestible and bite-sized we can take away and use from tomorrow. So thank you so much. Thank you to everyone on the webinar today for your time, your engagement, and for coming along. I appreciate the trust you place in us at NAB, and we look forward to working with you to strengthen your cyber resilience. So thank you and good evening.